because of everybody's response to Kendrick.
What has been the response to Kendrick that you've seen?
Just everybody being,
Who's everybody?
Twitter.
Oh, Black Twitter?
Oh no, that was. I just read that for fun.
We don't talk about Black Twitter. We do not talk about Black Twitter. If you have not experienced Black Twitter, let me tell you, friends, my white friends, just don't tell anybody you do it.
Yeah,
but go check it out.
I owe you eternally for that. There's nothing that cheers me up like Black Twitter.
It's a beautiful thing.
It really is.
It's an annoying thing sometimes, but it's a beautiful thing.
But the just the comedy on there and
the humor is not a place. You don't get that kind of humor everywhere. No, it's a unique kind of humor. Don't. And actually, what's funny about it? Black Twitter is a 90s humor that doesn't appear typically in society, right? Like you don't see it everywhere.
Yeah.
The last places you see it is Dave Chappelle.
Right. Yeah. And I've been rewatching the Dave Chappelle show, and it's definitely
yep.
That same and. So yeah, so that's where I go when Twitter gets depressing.
Okay, so can we talk about the halftime show?
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay, couple things. So let's just put to death real quick the idea that, this wasn't popular. Kendrick Lamar isn't popular. I think that his song selections weren't the best. I'm going to start with all the negative stuff, which is usually what you don't do. You always start with the positive stuff. Here's my critique. Kendrick Lamar is an artist that is for a unique sector, and he's happened to cross into you got to remember, this is his second time being at the Super Bowl. I believe his first time was with Dr. Dre.
Yeah, and Snoop.
And Snoop, which was a huge moment because hip-hop doesn't rise. It's usually... it's a low number. Like for instance, in pop music, if pop music does 6 billion, hip hop at its greatest is going to do 1.5 billion in streams.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the level of, so it's not, everybody, Dr. Dre has been like here forever. So you got to give it to him. He comes in, he brings in all his guys, Snoop, 50 Cent, Eminem, Kendrick Lamar, Did
you just say 50 cents?
50 Cent.
You put an S on the end.
50 cents.
I think I need your black card.
Just call him 50.
50.
But I knew people wouldn't know who he was unless I said 50 cents. Cents. I say ask too. Because my parents taught me real English. Right. It's not his first time. But this last round with Kendrick was absolutely astounding in the fact that he did something 1.5 billion off his last album. And he did 400 of that, was it 400 of that? I think he did, I wrote it down somewhere. No, 44 million of that he did in the first day.
Right.
So his last album blew up, and it blew up because of the beef between him and Drake, which a large portion of that audience probably didn't even know about. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
People who were there, I think, knew about it. People who were watching, I don't know if they knew about it. But when you have all those people who were at the Super Bowl say A minor, you know that they knew what was going on. Yeah, when you can hear it from Kendrick Lamar's microphone, which by the way you could hardly hear Kendrick.
Yeah,
but you can.
There were microphone problems.
Yeah, clearly the mix was horrible.
The mix was bad.
It was really bad for us. Now, my whole thing with Kendrick is I think that stage was too big for him. I think the Super Bowl was too big for Kendrick, and it showed, and he was too arrogant to recognize that it shouldn't have been him by himself. SZA, come on.
They just dropped an album together.
I know.
So
I got it.
It makes sense. And
no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
It's a popular album.
And it's popular, but it's
in the moment.
Yeah, but
they didn't have the stage was great. The staging was good, but they didn't have the
presence.
They
couldn't fill it up.
a stage that large.
The stage was too big for him, and he should have had other people who could help him fill that stage.
The other thing, though, is
But I think he was too arrogant to do that.
yeah, that's probably true. But he also he played to the camera more than the crowd, and that is not what you normally get in a halftime show. So
It's been going that way. Beyonce did that with her.
Yeah.
Everybody's been doing that, so I'm not surprised.
but it doesn't work the way you think it's gonna to play to the camera instead of the crowd.
Depends, I guess, perspective. If you're there,
yeah, but even to treat the camera as if it is the important part, actually I think takes away from the live
sure, but it's hard.
aspect, which is what people are used to.
Well, you got to remember though, man. Most people who are even there are using their cameras to even enjoy the show.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
The perspective has changed in performance.
Yeah.
We're not there anymore.
Yeah.
Our perspective is here now.
I wonder how many people in the
Oh,
audience
yeah. And then they literally flip around and watch themselves
watch themselves
watching
yeah.
themselves watching the performance on their phone.
Yeah.
So we've
been dislodged from ourselves by the screens.
Absolutely. So I'm not. So when matter of fact, and because I'm kind of stuck in these weird worlds where I'm halfway in this one and halfway in that one and halfway in another one, I'm fighting with myself about this all the time. So I'm having that conversation too. But when he was doing Peekaboo, and I see him over here on the camera, I'm watching him do there, and then the camera turns and he pops up from underneath. I'm like, that's dope.
Yeah, that was good.
That was dope.
That was awesome.
I don't like it. I don't like it. He wasn't over here just a minute ago, and he just pops up. That's not how it do. That's a camera trick. This is supposed to be a live performance, but that was dope. So you know what I mean? Like I'm torn between it.
It looked like a Jim Henson moment.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm not. But
not that he looks like a puppet, but he looks like a puppet.
Well, so and
walks like a puppet.
I think so. So overall, I don't rank this as a high performing, high magnitude performance from an artist. On the person to me who owns the day right now that you have to top since he's still alive and still around is Bruno Mars.
Yeah,
he has the best Super Bowl performance outside of Michael Jackson right now.
Yeah, Michael Jackson was the peak, but yes.
Yeah, but he was kind of really the first too, right? Like
the first to treat it the way.
We're treating it now.
Everybody's trying to.
Thank you, weigh-ins. I don't think people understand the reality of the weigh-ins making the. You don't know about this?
Did they produce that?
No. You know how we got Super Bowl halftime performances?
In Living Color, yeah.
In Living Color, no. Everybody used to leave for the halftime Super Bowl performance because it was a bunch of bands and people playing. And so the weigh-ins weren't getting a whole lot of love over, was it Fox where they were at?
Fox,
yeah. And so what they decided to do was during the time that most people leave the Super Bowl anyway to go watch something, they put on their own like show during that halftime, which took all the viewers from the Super Bowl and went over and watched what they were doing during that time in that break and made the Super Bowl have to say, wait a second, we have to do something, create some form of entertainment to maintain the attention of our viewers because they just took all of them. And
Keenan was a brilliant guy.
Was brilliant.
Still is. Yeah.
And so it made them have to do what they did. Say, okay, who do we get? And Michael Jackson. And boy, that was a performance. So anyway, you got Bruno Mars.
I'm in that moment when he's just standing there and the whole thing's quiet and he's got everybody's attention and they're waiting for him to take his glasses off.
Have you heard the behind the scenes mic? Yeah. Where all the producers are like, Michael, hit it. Come on, hit it, Michael. Michael, that's enough. Like, there's a whole recording. Like, oh, he's not going to do it. Please, Michael, do the move. Take off the glass. Like, then you can just hear him flipping out in the back. And he is so well trained to know how to perform.
Yeah.
That he knew, let this sit. And it only got bigger. I mean, think about this. This is the only person where folks passed out to see Mike. Like, I've never seen that. The guys who was like, I don't even know what's wrong with me. I just hyperventilated and passed out, dude. I don't know. It's crazy. Like, Michael was on that level. But this stage was too big for Kendrick. And he didn't do what he should have done, which was invite people to fill that stage for him for the performance. And he didn't sing the songs that historically have made people fall in love with Kendrick either. Right? Like, a lot of his songs were left out that people love.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. But I think people really don't understand what happened I think I was telling you this on the phone. We were texting back and forth. It's like we weren't watching a halftime performance. It wasn't a halftime performance. It was a funeral. We watched the funeral of Drake happen in front of us with no body. It was almost like a memorial in one sense.
Yeah. They couldn't recover the body.
This was whatever happened, and this is deeper than I can even probably express. The industry fired Drake, and they used Kendrick Lamar to bury his body. And there's something really, really deep going on that we have no idea about that'll probably come out in 20 years about this moment where Drake completely got forsaken by everybody in the industry and his own friends and institutions and artists. This was a burial. Whenever you are allowed to go on stage and call somebody a pedophile and make everybody else shout A minor while wearing an A lowercase a chain, and then have your ex-girlfriend, Serena Williams, crip walking. And this is and so a lot of people aren't familiar with the narrative. So they don't know how bad this was. So they're just like, what is this? It's like there's a whole nother group of people who are like, dang, I can't believe it just happened. Like, this is diabolical.
Yeah. Well, and there was two things with the Serena stuff because she also
she's from Compton.
She's from Compton. She after winning a match, she was standing over by the bench and was crip walking, just dancing to the music, and a whole bunch of people freaked out and said, "You can't do that." And
this is tennis.
This is tennis. We're not in Compton, and so there was also
there's a cultural moment there.
A cultural declaration that I'm going to be where I'm from,
right?
No matter what. Like, so there's an anti, there's definitely a localism moment.
It's a Christian nationalist moment, but in the hood. Everybody's localizing.
Everybody's saying, no, I'm from, Compton is more important to me than being a part of the global
elite.
Everybody.
That's what, and it's kind of
everybody's
good.
saying. Yeah,
yeah, it's
no,
good.
And it's important. It's actually an important thing because we don't, being a part of, there's been such a push to be a global citizen and to play along with the agenda and all of that. And
not love your locals.
Not love your own city, your own neighborhood,
right.
All of that, and not like us. The song, that's even what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's about we. This is real for us. This is our neighborhood. This is and
he put tariffs. He put tariffs on Drake. Doggone. Anyway, I'm just thinking of all different ways to express like Canada.
Yeah.
Did you see? And so, by the way, he won 4 or 5 Grammys.
I think 5 Grammys.
5 Grammys, and he wore when he went up to go win his Grammys. This boy is petty. This dude wore a Canadian tuxedo, which, by the way, if you don't know, like there's all sorts of poetic language happening in everything he does.
Yeah.
Kendrick Lamar is playing around with poetry, not just when he speaks, but when he's not speaking, whatever he's doing.
Yeah, he thinks really deeply about everything, and there's a definite pettiness to a lot of it.
It's pure pettiness. Like to wear a Canadian tuxedo to go get your award about stumping you out. That's just the level of petty that I can't even imagine.
Well, and even
he's mean. He's just mean.
Yeah. Even there was a lot of Americana in his in the show, which makes sense. You're at the Super Bowl, but a lot of it was anti-Canadian.
It was
as much as anything.
That's what. But I mean, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It wasn't just pro-America.
Yeah,
it was anti-Drake.
It was anti-Drake, and the Super Bowl might not have been the right place.
No, it wasn't
to do all that.
It was clearly the wrong place to do it, which is why he did it.
Yeah,
because he's that petty, and he's say, well, if you get me, you get all of me, right? Like, so don't if you don't want this,
right?
and in a lot of ways, I appreciate. I completely disagree with so much of what he did in a lot of ways, and I so appreciate his tenacity. I'm gonna be me all the time, everywhere. This is what you're gonna get, Mr. Petty. He's so petty. Like, people even missed it who weren't a part of the conversation. They want to hear their favorite song, but he liked to sue. And a lot of people didn't know what happened.
He said, these people like to sue.
These people like to sue.
So
we know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, that's wasn't the right place to do a lot of this. Picked a lot of the wrong songs, stage too big for him, and still kind of impressive.
Yeah. But I think
something got underneath your skin though.
Well, one of the things that got underneath my skin was just the way so many people just went after. I guess the entire conservative side of things is so used to being reactionary that a lot of the response wasn't even, it was, man, I can't understand what he's saying. Well, that was a microphone. That was a mix problem. There was a definite mix problem there.
Well, I don't think most people even knew the songs he was.
Yeah, he did some deep cuts and things like that. But I think so many conservatives, they don't realize that a poet is the halftime show, and as conservatives,
has that ever happened? Like, it's been a long time since we had a.
I mean, maybe the Dr. Dre, but it was a whole group, and that was more.
That was more pop poetry, wasn't it? Though.
Well, it was like party. It was all the party songs. Is what they played.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah, that's right.
It was.
That's right.
It was like a barbecue halftime show. And this was a poet is the halftime performer, and to say, man, I wish we would have just had, something like we used to have, or like Kid Rock, or some like you immediately have everybody talking exegesis within half an hour. You've got everybody on Twitter that's paying attention is talking poetic exegesis. What did he mean? What was it?
Can I just, before I'm gonna let you finish, so please don't forget that thought. I can't think of the last time in music since Tupac's Machiavelli album that people have thought about poetic exegesis in a song. I can't think of like that. I mean, it's like just going everywhere.
Yeah, I mean,
turn of phrases, maybe a little bit with Drake. They were playing, but poetry.
But before that, you had to go back. You have to go back to Paul Simon and Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen, before you start having
poetics, the same kind,
like the same kind of response of
people don't even know that that's happening.
Let's dig into the language and talk layers and talk allegorical interpretation and all of that's what's going on.
People don't even know that exists. It's happening inside of Kendrick Lamar stuff right now. They're not even aware of the poetic exegesis that's happening.
And
it is.
Whenever Kendrick drops an album, you immediately get these poetic exegetes that start pulling it apart. When J. Cole drops an album, you get that. Like, you don't get that very often, and it happened at the Super Bowl halftime show, and because we start by assuming that we hate things and we're being attacked on the conservative side, we're not a part of the conversation of the poets of our day, and we are, and the poets of a society always forge the trail. There's never been a society that was not led by its poets, hands down. Period. That is that, and we're not a part of the conversation because we just, well, for one, we don't produce
poetry
or much poetry, and we don't, and we assume it's poetry we're being attacked, right? And that has been true, right? it's amazing when you start looking through. This is something that the left has understood. That's why when the USAID lists start coming out, you see how many times they're funding revolutionary poets around the world, right? Because they're trying to overthrow societies, and so they say we need poets. And this is what reminded me of Shakespeare. This is when Julius Caesar, so Cassius, who leads the overthrow and the killing of Caesar, when Caesar first sees Cassius. I mean, he knows who he is, but and he's talking with Antony, and Caesar, he says, "I don't trust that guy. He's too sleek-headed, and he's got a lean and hungry look. He thinks too much. Such men are dangerous." And Antony says, "No, he's a good guy. He's one of us. He loves Rome." And Cassius believes he loves Rome, but he's about to destroy Caesar in the name of Rome. But really, it's because he's envious, right? And so Cassius's central sin is envy. And Caesar says, "Would he were fatter, but I fear him not. Yet if my name were liable to fear, I do not know the man that I should avoid so soon as that spare Cassius. He reads much. He's a great observer. He looks quite through the deeds of men, but he loves no plays, as you do, Antony. He hears no music. Seldom he smiles, and smiles in such a sort as if he mocked himself and scorned his spirit that could be moved to smile at anything. Such men as he be never at heart's ease, whilst they behold a greater than themselves, and therefore are they very dangerous." Right? He recognizes his envy, and he says the sign of his envy is that he can't enjoy things with the group. He can't enjoy a play. He can't enjoy music with the group because everything is an opportunity to raise himself, and becoming a part. Loving the movies that everybody else loves. You have to say, "Oh man, I hate Marvel. Rap music is the worst. Popular music is the worst these days." That's that. Shakespeare says that's usually envy, and that's usually an undue hatred of people that are above you, and because you don't like people above you, right? So, it's just conservative Twitter was Cassius yesterday, and it just. But it always is, right? A movie's popular, and everybody says, "Oh, it's probably terrible. I don't even need to watch it. I know it's bad because it's popular." That automatic hatred, that refusal to enter into the things that people are enjoying, I think,
is it the same?
Shakespeare hits it on the head. That's envy most of the time.
Do you think that's the same thing that falls with Taylor Swift?
I think so. I mean, her songwriting isn't what it used to be, and she has been, she has, I think, turned on her fans, in some of her newer albums, which was weird to watch. The people that had loved her all this time, she turns around and is awful towards them in a couple of songs and on her, not this album, but the previous album. And so there was some, and there's a reason everybody goes, "Oh, so that dude buys all your rights," and then suddenly you write a song supporting his agenda, right? There, I think there's some of that, but I also think that when, if popularity makes you automatically hate something, right? If that person has fans, that, I think, that gut reaction, Shakespeare just says,
so
envy does that to us.
So let's just assume for a second that I'm the person you're talking about for a little bit, and I sit up here and watch Beyonce win the Country Album of the Year, right? And I'm like, right? Because Beyonce didn't sing anything country. And I know a few artists country that I love.
Yeah.
And here it is. And, and I don't care.
As one of my children said, how does Beyonce win Album of the Year when Chris Stapleton exists?
I don't get that. Chris Stapleton didn't win Country Artist of the Year. Like, I don't know if he did an album this year.
Yeah, actually, I don't know either.
And so it's fair enough. But I'll tell you this much. His oldest album is still more country music than her newest one.
Right.
And it's still better as a country artist album.
But the Grammys aren't what they used to be because they changed the way voting happens. So
great.
Yeah, when you give block voting to people, it
so
undercuts the whole thing. So
I see what you're saying. So Kendrick's a little different because he groundswelled.
Yeah.
This wasn't. It didn't seem the machine got on board after the culture in this case.
They came on and they said, "Yep, he's ours."
Yep, let's get rid of Drake.
After
the culture put him on.
Well, and after he walked through and he blew holes in the bottom of the ship, and then.
By the way, that ship was governed by the top rappers of all time. You got J. Cole, you had Drake, and then the big three.
Yeah.
And he comes in and says, F the big three.
Yeah. And we still know who won that battle, right? It was J. Cole.
It was J. Cole. J. Cole is the one who won the battle.
He's the winner.
He's
there.
the smartest person of everybody. Was like, yeah, this is gonna be a problem.
Yeah.
He woke up and said, it just didn't feel right in my spirit.
Right.
He literally said that.
Yeah, this didn't feel right in my spirit.
He
was
said,
like, I thought about Kendrick a little bit and was like that dude's petty.
No, he said, this just don't feel right in my spirit. Hey man, take your hits. I was wrong. Yeah, you have it all, bro.
I'm pulling that one.
And you know what? Kendrick, as petty as he was, didn't say anything else about Cole.
Yep.
It's he okay, cool. He respects, so as petty as he is, because Cole came for him, didn't really. It's kind of bounced.
Yeah. Ding. Well, but it was less than 24 hours before he pulled back, though.
Oh, it was within 24 hours. He was like, that was a bad move. He was like, I went to bed, I woke up.
I don't want to be that.
That same spirit was not on Drake. I'll tell you that.
No, it wasn't. And I think, Drake had been protected so long, he didn't understand that the Secret Service was no longer at the door.
Yes,
because he was talking like they still were,
right,
and then they weren't.
No. So then what should have, because I have my critiques of what I saw on Sunday, and there was a few things that I was disappointed with. I mean, as a person who knows entertainment and who has worked in that industry before, and I'm like, man, he missed a great opportunity to me, and I think the stage was too big for him. I don't think people knew his songs. I mean, I know of Kendrick Lamar, I know his stuff, and I couldn't have hummed along with anything except A minor, because everybody knows that one.
Yeah, and Be Humble, and
Be Humble.
There's a handful of songs of his that I know, and I was like, oh, there's one I know. Oh, there's one I know, and the only
reason I know those is because everybody else was singing those songs everywhere. There wasn't a place you could turn that you couldn't hear those songs, right? And so,
I listened to the radio with my kids on our way to school. We listened to the top 40 station so that I'm aware, because I still got teenagers, so it's important that I know what's going on.
And you're part of the world, so
I'm part of the world, and a lot of times songs are top 40 for a reason, like.
Right,
they're good.
So then, what should have been? You saw those responses, and you're saying that they're basically a form of envy that's coming out of them.
Yeah,
and
there was a lot of that. Yeah,
some of the stuff I saw, I thought was just pure ignorance. Like, it's just ignorance.
The idea that somebody ends up at the Super Bowl and nobody knows them, that I saw that a lot. Nobody even knows who this guy is, well,
that's just ignorance.
You should start by saying, okay, you don't make it to the Super Bowl halftime show with nobody listening to you,
right? He's got billions of streams.
Yeah, so you look him up and say, dude's got billions of streams.
Yeah,
dude's breaking records.
They're not like us.
on
is
Apple.
by itself got 1.03 billion.
Yeah.
And I think this whole album that just came out, GNX, has over 1.5 billion. So there's just one song at $1 billion, then a whole album, at $1 billion. Like he's there's no question about his notoriety.
Right. And so you could fully embrace, hey, this is the next generation's music, right? That'd be a totally fine thing to say, you know what? This is not my generation's music. I wish they would have had Neil Diamond up there,
I'll go back to Bruno Mars. Bruno Mars did it.
Right. He was great, right?
I don't know who didn't like that halftime show.
Yeah. So it's one thing to say that wasn't a great halftime show.
Yeah, that's how I felt about it. There's some moments there. There's some moments there.
Great moments.
There's some, like when you see the poetry that's there with the flag.
Mm-hmm.
So you have red, white, and blue, right?
And you don't see what's happening because and this is one of the things that I thought was really good was the choreography was really good.
Yeah,
they're walking around dancing and they're forming together and you don't realize it until the camera pans up and they've formed the flag. And then he splits the flag and walks down the middle, and it's red, white, and blue. But there's definitely two meanings because he's incompetent.
Right.
So you've got Crips and Bloods coming together.
Exactly.
In America, and then you've got you have things going on that are really good in the show. But I've watched a couple of different Kendrick Lamar live shows. He's not great live.
Well, hold on. See, that's the thing. This is why this was so disappointing to me. I've seen him at the Oscars. I've seen him at BET Awards and MTV Awards, and I've seen him at all these other places. And all his other, the one he did with Beyonce, the Freedom song that they did together.
I actually didn't see that.
So Kendrick Lamar's performances usually are massive. Those stages are smaller though.
Yes, that's exactly it. Is on a small stage. His music and the way that his choreography always works. It's always designed for tiny, like small round stages. That's what he does most of his shows on. And this was a huge L-shaped stage. The stage was gorgeous, actually. The staging itself was all, I think, really well done.
I think it was at 50%. That's just my thoughts.
I mean, the physical structure of the stage, I thought it was cool.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but this is a Super Bowl.
No, but they could have used it better, right?
Yeah.
The one part where they were using the stage well is when they went up onto the small round stage, and then they had the camera panning along below. I thought, oh, they're using that stage well. The other part, and then when you had the camera move in the four directions.
Yeah,
right?
the X.
There were just a couple of spots where I'm like, oh, but you had to be in close for it to
That's
work.
why they use the camera.
Yeah, and so you had a big large stage, but you didn't have a big large production on the big large stage.
Right. So, exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah, but the response to say nobody even knows who this guy is. I don't understand him, right? I mean, even Eminem, I saw an interview with him recently where he's like, man, rappers these days.
Whenever Eminem gets to talk about rappers these days, I'm just blown away. I'm like, I'm officially old because he sounds old.
Yeah, because he sounds like that the uncle that is like, yeah, it's all been downhill since Van Halen,
Right. That might be true though. I'm just saying that.
But those sorts of moments, they should cause us to reflect. And you get old, and that's just part of life. And there's a way to get old that turns around and says, "It used to be better." Right?
There's, do you think there's been a huge push inside of kind of the conservative movement to try and get young men and to encourage them and not to discourage them? Do you think that this kind of is an inconsistency in some of the rhetoric to say, hey, don't discourage?
Well, I think what it is, yeah, there's some of that, don't discourage the next generation. But there's also confusion. Young men want masculine poetry. We are built that way. And the only place where they're getting masculine poetry is the poetry, coming out of Compton, coming out of Brooklyn, coming out of Detroit.
The Dirty South.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You've got but
those are the historic places where you got masculine poetry, right? You got the New York boys with the Timberlands on, and
Yep.
like that was. It's hard to get more like than that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Cali came back with Crunkin', right? Like you had that. That was
right. Yeah.
Like you did get those very masculine forms out of the hip hop culture.
Yeah, you really did. But and
punk rock has some too, though.
Punk rock had a lot of it, and a lot of the before kind of the pop punk movement, you had a deeper poetic sense there. You had out of kind of the original folk song movements were very masculine. Did you see the Bob Dylan movie?
No.
It's worth watching. It's really well done. You've had those moments, those places, those times, and for I think the conservative movement has ignored the arts, and that's a way of ignoring the next generation. It's a way of ignoring the young men in particular of the next generation, and that desire for a deep poetic, a deep poetic explanation of the world is something that you can't get. You're not going to get it from the conservatives because they have a tendency to think in terms of is this pushing for Democrats or Republicans, right? But to think that you've got Compton, you've got East LA, you've got Brooklyn, you've got Detroit, you've got Atlanta, you've got these places. We are now seeing who have been in these places where the poetry is coming out of. They've been saying the government is against us. The government is against us.
That's been
all this time. We're watching the USAID be exposed and realize it's true. They were right all along.
Yeah.
The government was against them because the government was against all of us. We're all, the whole conservative movement has been realizing for the last 5 years the government is against us, and we should start saying, hey, you know what? You're right. And who's been in charge all that time?
Well, I mean, it's been funny because some of that's exactly what some of the conservative movement has used to reach out to a lot of people inside of the urban communities. It's been like, yo, look, Trump is actually experiencing a lot of stuff that you guys have said has been going on, and that the justice system itself is not really giving out real justice. And lo and behold, here goes Trump going through exactly RICO charges.
Right. Well, did I
really?
Did I send you the African Americans for Trump post?
No.
I screenshotted it, and it said it had Obama and Trump next to each other, and it said Trump's the blackest president we've ever had, and it had and then underneath it said because orange is the new black.
That's funny. That's funny.
It was just a funny.
It's
It's a funny meme, but I think
that's because there's a couple different things as though too. If your lens is racial, you'll only see it that way.
Yeah.
But if your lens is localism, then it changes everything.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. Is the opportunity is to have a conversation that hasn't been available is there.
It's really available right now, though.
I think it was probably available before, but
no, I don't know if it's been available in the same way because when the there's been a group is like, well, the system isn't against you.
Yes. Well, and
COVID opened up another
COVID,
conversation.
yeah,
It was like, wait a second.
The system is totally against us. And that's where,
they would never arrest you for no reason. They would never do that. There's no conspiracy against you with the police. Yeah. What are you talking about?
And then, but USAID isn't showing us that a bunch of Democrats have been taking money. It's showing us that all of the politicians on every side,
they're not like us.
Have exactly right. They've been dipping into, they've been in line. They've all been in line for the funnel cake.
This is what's so amazing about this moment. This is why I say it's different, because the populist movement, when you get like an RFK that can come into this moment without having to be baptized into conservatism, tells you that the enemy has somehow is attacking everybody in such a way that conservative and people who are who are liberals and some classical liberals or whatever, they're kind of coming in and saying, what's his name? What's the comedian? Late night show, atheist guy. Slipped my mind.
Jimmy.
No. It's old school. Bill Maher. Maher.
Yeah, was it Bill Maher?
Yeah, it is. But when you got him, when I find myself, 2010, 2008, me and Bill Maher never said anything I agreed with, ever. All of a sudden, after COVID, it's like, what's Bill Maher got to say on the topic? Yeah. It's the weirdest thing. And
all of a sudden, Bill Maher's like, no, wait. Okay.
Right, yeah.
We did what? We're doing what?
And whenever there wasn't a place for me and an atheist to have a political alignment outside of Christopher Hitchens.
Yeah.
Christopher Hitchens saw it all.
Yeah, he had to drink just to survive. He saw so much.
Exactly. And so this alignment now is popular. It's funny because I was just thinking about this. Ron Paul is probably the John the Baptist of this current movement.
Yeah. Ron Paul and Thomas Sowell.
Ron Paul, Thomas Sowell. I'll say Pat Buchanan too. I'll put him in there as well.
I haven't read as much of his stuff, so
I've read 2 books now from Pat Buchanan, and they are rough reads because he's not holding back at all. But he's just telling it just like how it is. This is what they did. This is what they did. This is what they did. This is what they wanted. This is what they tried to do. And it was no question. It's amazing to me. I have no problem admitting the absolute potential type of erase that globalism and this universal doctrine tried to do to white men. There's no question about it. You see it. He documents it, and he goes through it. I can't remember 2012 or even before then. He's talking about it. Even before 2012, he's talking about it, but I can't remember which book it is. I'll look it up. And he just goes through it, and I'm like, I've seen this before.
Right.
So I can look at what Pat Buchanan is like. I know they doing this to y'all because they did it to us.
Right.
Right. And now the shoe is just flipped. I'm like, well, we'll let you guys try and do it to them. And it's like, well, wait a second. We don't want that. That's not what we're after here. And so the issue, this is why I keep going, like the issue really isn't a racial thing. It's the, for lack of a better word, it's the worldview and ideology that's being shared about an individual's right to freedom that they're trying to demolish. And they're using racial categories as a weapon to do it.
Yeah.
And so in the same way that I see them trying to erase and completely abolish white guys in America, because the truth is, anytime there's a man that stands between Marxism, globalism, and the family and the institution, guess what you got to get rid of? The man.
Right.
Right? They already destroyed black men. The black family is just in shambles. It's coming back, praise God. I believe it's starting to make a way back because everybody's like, wait a second, my family's the only thing that matters if I'm going to have continued success long term, right? And so I think you see a rational return to that. And now what a lot of white men are going through, they're going through 60 years after the black family has already gone through and lost that battle. It's just why I'm trying to tell them a lot of ways, yo, don't take some of this bait. But so I can look at what they're doing and what they've done and be like, yeah, I've seen this move before. I know what this leads to. And they're trying to pull the same move on y'all that they pulled on us. Right. Right. And so there's this weird thing happening in Trump where everybody's kind of getting unified. It's like, yeah, we see the move too. And it's seeing the move from this movement, from this Marxist movement that is binding a lot of people together, which I think when it happened in the 50s and when it happened in the 60s, there was still so much separation, segregation coming out of the 40s, coming out of the 20s,
Right.
that it was still too racial. And I think the kind of repentance that America had somewhere in the 60s, I do consider that a form of repentance. As much as I don't like how we tried to fix things, it was wrong. But I think it was a turning of the country's heart about their brother in some way that allowed for a unity around ideas, around concepts, and not just skin color. And some of the battle that's being fought now is still around skin color. We have to figure out how to say, I think COVID is saying, wait a second, this is a globalist idea. They don't care. They just want to have control over us. How about we come together, Crips and Bloods, right? Like that's what, whenever Crips and Bloods get together, you know what I'm saying? The problem, we're at a serious high level of threat when Crips and Bloods got to say, yo, they trying to take us out here.
Yeah. When they say, you can't fight over a neighborhood if the neighborhood's gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got aliens here, people.
Yeah.
Aliens have come. Everybody join forces. Somebody go get the Ku Klux Klan.
But
maybe not go that far. Maybe we're not going that far yet.
Well, when you look around and say, okay, wait, who has been stockpiling weapons? We need them on our team.
But, you look at Ron Paul, this has been interesting to me because of what Elon Musk is doing with Doge and his salute to Ron Paul, you see finally that, man, he was right. There was a clip I posted where Ron Paul is having he's at a presidential debate 20 years ago. 2004, was it? 2000? Yeah.
Yeah, probably 2004.
I think Bush was running for president at that time, was it something like that? And I remember, because I was around the first time I started voting. And I remember watching Ron Paul saying something about what he says is attractive, but really radical.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if I can go that radical, but this looks really attractive. And I remember like kind of flirting with it. But had we done the majority of what Ron Paul wanted us to do 20 years ago, we would have a completely different nation than we currently have right now.
But what was radical at the time was he said, we should be passing audits.
Right. Right.
And everybody was like, that's a bridge too far.
Yeah.
Passing audits.
Nobody's doing anything bad. The government doesn't do anything bad.
Right.
And he's like, no, you don't understand. That's all they can do. They're beast. So you use the beast for what the beast is for. It's for protection. You don't use them to make you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Yeah.
Right? You don't use them for FEMA. Like that's not what the beasts aren't good at that stuff, right? That's not what they do. Wild animals don't do that kind of thing. They're good for protection, and they're going to overspend. They're going to overpromise and underdeliver, and it's going to make you submissive to them, right? In a way where you don't have your own free. You don't want that.
Right.
And at the time, I'm like, what you mean we're not free? I feel free, right? So it didn't make any sense. My whole point in bringing that up, though, was, okay, here we are again. By the grace of God, we have an opportunity 20 years later with a movement that I believe that Ron Paul, Thomas Sowell, I think Ron Paul was kind of the tip of the spear on that one. Thomas Sowell has been doing all the fancy work underneath that nobody's really seeing.
Yeah, he's been Ezra in the library.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think Pat Buchanan has been this fourth estate in a lot of ways, just like, let me tell you, they're trying to fundamentally change what this country is, right? He's been the guy who's just been sounding it off, right? I think there's a couple other people I would put in that too, who've been prophets for us. But so now you have this movement that is all around a Ron Paul type of attitude and understanding and freedom. And you're like, whoa. And it's just infantile. And so I'm looking at this moment. I'm like, we missed it 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we didn't make the moves that we should have made because we didn't think the government was as bad as it was or as far gone as it was. Whatever it was, we couldn't understand. We thought the idea were good. People weren't explaining. Ron Paul was just out there. there wasn't a mechanism to get Ron Paul information directly to you in 2004 outside of seeing him on main stages.
Yeah.
So you had to go back to the emails and get an email list going on, or you had to go. It wasn't in your reels.
Right.
It wasn't you woke up and you have a good clip of somebody talking about something that you've disagreed with for years, and you're like, wow, actually a really good explanation. There wasn't a way where like you had some other mechanism that's getting 10 million downloads like Joe Rogan show to listen to these conversations. Nobody was paying attention to it. Rogan was working at the time. We just didn't have the information. Like there's all these moments going on. I think Rogan started 2006 or something like that. I can't remember when.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Somewhere in there. Anyway, so there wasn't a mechanism to be able to have this kind of information, let alone a movement. And so here we are now. We have the roads made for the information to get to us. The momentum is with us. We have leaders who are fearless and who are actually taking it to the deep state, starting to anyway. We haven't even started. We're just barely in there dealing with you. Do you know how we found?
Been a week, right?
Yeah, 3 weeks now. Trump has been in office, and a week of USAID. And you know how we found them? The reason USAID got on the map for Elon was because Trump had stopped all of the spending, foreign aid and spending in government agencies. Said, "Hey, put a hold on it." And so a lot of them kicked up some smoke.
Right.
And Elon said, the ones who kick up the most smoke, we're going to start with them first. So USAID tried to continue their payments even though the president had stopped them.
Oh.
So they formed so they formed the largest pimple on the skin to say, oh, maybe that's where we need to start.
Maybe that's where the infection is.
If those agencies don't sit down and shut up somewhere, they're going to be next. Right? And so they made the most noise because we're going to try and do it anyway. And then Elon said, well, let's start here. They were going to get there, but they weren't
on the map.
They weren't on the map.
Yeah.
They put themselves on the map by rejecting the leadership that they have in front of them. Therefore, we got USAID, and it turns out we got some massive problems. And they should have kept their mouth shut.
Well, and all of the, when you had Tupac back in the day saying, the CIA is sending money in order to control us, right? And everybody goes, what? And then suddenly he gets shot. And a whole bunch of people at the time were like,
well, shoot, Malcolm X.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it goes back further than that. And I simultaneously am dying for all of the JFK and MLK, all that to come out. And I'm also really nervous because I think when you find out what's been really going on, I actually don't know how our country's going to respond.
I do.
What do you think is going to happen?
Destroy all the institutions.
That's what I think is going to happen too. And a lot of baby is going out with the bathwater, and I know that's the case. But
here's the thing with government:
it's so intertwined that there's no the Doge guy that posted a description of what they've been doing. He said there's no thread to pull that doesn't unravel hundreds of sweaters. That's what they've discovered as soon as they started opening it up, because they've been mapping the money, how the money travels around. And he said there's no thread that doesn't unravel hundreds of sweaters. And that's there's we know the playbook of the media is find the story that's sad, and it doesn't work anymore.
I think we have to remember nobody is ever ready for repentance.
And you don't realize when you start repenting what else is touched.
You don't even begin to you don't even know. You have no idea there's other idols in your heart that you haven't even begin to think about. It's just the stuff on the surface. But that's one of the things that God does in his grace is he doesn't give us everything at once.
Right.
and I'm watching it. We're unraveling now. Like he's unraveling it, and it's like, okay. Gabe asked this question a lot. Will people truly repent when they start seeing the real muck underneath? And that's the thing. Like that's because I think we have America's a kind of a more unique society than we think. We've had these separate pockets of covenanted people that has protected us from a full like swing. Like there's always been balanced here. So one goes one way and then we come back again. Grace of God rebalances us, right? It's like many pockets of revival to keep us sane and completely going off. We didn't deserve Trump. God gave us Trump against most Republican and conservative wishes. People just, and then in that we found out, oh my goodness, this is the right tool for the moment. This is chemo. It's working, right? Not because it's making things come to life, but we need some things to die.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now we're like, we really need to kill some of these things. And so I think we're getting the chemo in the system. And so some things are going to die. But I'm not as worried about if what we're going to do. I'm more worried about if we're going to know. How much of it are we going to know? I think it seems like Trump is willing to reveal it all.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. So we could have went through this process that we're going through 20 years ago had we elected Ron Paul president.
Yeah.
We had the opportunity to do that 20 years ago. He was on the stage. I remember seeing that whole debate. I think you had Perry on there. You had Bush on there. You had there's a few other people on there too. I can't remember all their names, but I see their faces. But I remember Ron Paul looking like the best candidate on that stage. And I was like, wow, it's between, for me, is Ron Paul or Bush, right? Bush was just more polished.
Yeah.
He was way more polished. Ron Paul just seemed like he was way too radical, no foreign, like getting our troops out of the Middle East and stuff. Oh my goodness, what is going on with that? We can't do that. You know how bad the people want to kill us? And we take our troops, it'd be horrible. Why would we have to be involved in foreign affairs? No, right? He seems so radical. But if we would have did that 20 years ago, the place we'd be at would be radically different, which means to me at this point, when God gives you the same place again 20 years later, but with a larger group of people understanding the time and the moment, you bounce on it. Like you take that moment. And I'm like, what if 20 years ago, if a large majority of Christians would have allowed their children to be educated by them and not their adversaries, how many more Elon Musk, Ron Paul, Trumpian type of people would we have right now? Right?
Well, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I do. At the time, the only folks that I knew that were really into Ron Paul were the classically educated folks. It was all of these people that had actually read the Constitution,
right,
that had read the original sources.
Libertarians too, right? He had a huge libertarian, but those are constitutional folks for the most part.
Those were so it was all the Constitution Party folks. But what happened was those movements, I think what happened actually is there was all sorts of money flowing into the Republican Democratic Party that was invisible. And so a lot of those movements thought, well, we've got a chance. We're raising money. But they didn't realize how much money there was on the other side, because so much of it was invisible. It wasn't actually being recorded as campaign donations, because it wasn't campaign donations. It was money being shuffled, and there was this whole shell game of money that they weren't a part of, and that's what has kept it a two-party system for so long. I don't know if the Democratic Party survives this.
No, they're going to have to die and be reborn.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to be reborn as the Democratic Party or
they will.
You think so?
Yeah, so because they're going to have to go back to their roots, and nothing is a better story than being like, let me tell you who we are. They're going to have to retell their Democratic story. We love slaves. Oh wait, different era. Right. But they're going to have to rebrand.
They have been the party of. I mean, they were the party of slavery during slavery,
Sure.
but they've been the party of slavery. That's what made them open to the communist, because communism says
Working class. right.
well, they just say we'll make everyone slaves, and the
Right.
Democrats said, hey, well, we've been all for
We like
slavery.
that.
We like that. Let's make everybody slaves. And so that's been, but what do you do? The question is going to be, what institutions do we dig in and build now
For us.
for us?
That's
Yeah.
that's what I was going to get to. I thought you were going to still go into the Democratic Party. They need a complete they need a brand makeover.
Yeah.
But I want to go, this is where I want to go to, because
But the reality is, as soon as they embraced identity politics, this was coming. It always eats itself.
well, everyone had embraced identity politics, which is why you get an Obama election,
Yeah.
because the right had embraced identity. We still do. It's not an accident that our press secretary is a woman. She's dope, right? But we're playing the same game, but we're playing it a little different.
Yeah, I don't know if for Trump it's as much identity politics as he understands how entertainment works.
Sure, but it's still understanding that in order to understand how entertainment works, you understand how people perceive things.
Yep.
Right?
But that's what's different about that than identity politics is identity politics is founded on critical theory.
Yeah.
In a way that I don't think what Trump is doing is founded on critical theory. He just understands if the smartest person in the room is also the most beautiful woman in the room,
Right.
that's,
Geisel.
yeah, you've got a series of advantages.
Yeah.
Uh,
This is the guy who owned Miss USA.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
Like, he knows what he's doing.
yeah, and
Fox does the same thing. It's my
No,
biggest problem. Like,
it's true. It's true, and that's a so the foundation.
It's easy to disagree with ugly people.
Well, and yeah, that's.
Oh, you didn't want to go there. I'm just going to tell you what it is. People act like this don't exist.
Oh no, it totally exists.
Like, people who
And
are unattractive have different lives than people who are attractive. And
it's totally true. It's There's a. It's a.
And Jace, tell me how it feels to be so. Well, we'll just move on for that.
Yeah, I can vouch that having a face that is better mostly covered by hair.
Face for radio. Let's just say it like that.
Face for radio does make things harder.
Yeah, it's
So-
a different lifestyle. And people don't know that, but guys like, so I guess you're saying it's not identity
It's
politics.
not identity politics.
It is it's entertainment, and it's a way to play the game. I say this all the time. If I know I have to sell to a particular client, and I know this client perceives a particular thing better, if I have to hire me a Chinese dude to work for me so that I can sell to this client because he feels like that's his people and he wants, I'll hire me a Chinese dude to sell that
Right.
all the time. I'm not worried about identity politics. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is trying to make a sale.
right.
That
Yeah.
money politics is
Money
what I'm
po-
worried. But
Well, yeah. I mean, I have because I signed up for most of my streaming services while I was still in California in a county that was more than 50% Spanish speaking. I get a lot of ads in Spanish
okay,
targeted at me because of the zip code in my sign up process, and you could say, "Oh man, what's the world coming to?" But I know that what it is they're saying, "How am I going to sell the most cars?"
yeah,
Well, Spanish speaking money is just as green as English speaking money.
this was a lie that the left has communicated really well. I think they've done a great job of communicating this to the point that large companies who know better bought into it. The left communicated the idea that a large majority of the people that exist out here really do believe in the trans movement.
Right.
And there's a lot of trans people out here to sell to that you didn't know about, and you're completely missing this demographic to sell to.
Yeah. The Bud Light commercial in the Super Bowl. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, they're trying so hard to be like, we're the least trans company you've ever seen.
And this is what's so crazy to me. Like, black people have been the number one consumer in America for a long time. It's not a new thing, right? We've known that. And that's before we ever had commercials dedicated to us. You didn't have to do, like, we're 13% of the population, huge consumers. we never needed commercials for us. If we like it, we gonna get it. Because if we like your product, you don't have to have a commercial with us dancing in it and singing. We don't care. We liked McDonald's before you did that. Dot the end. I mean, so it really didn't matter, right? But there's been a lie that's been told that if you don't do these things, there's so much more out there. And so I think with the trans stuff particularly, it's like, hey, large companies, there's this opportunity out here that you're missing. They're like, oh, there is. And they just care about sales. They don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
They just care about sales. They're not after a huge movement.
There also was, they did.
Which is why the free market is so important to protect.
Right. Well, but there also was a diversity score that got attached to your loans.
Yep.
In in 2018, 2019, they started attaching a diversity score to your loan percentage.
Yep.
So you got a discount on your loan percentage based on your diversity score. And that also had a huge effect on
that's because
what we saw.
Well, yeah, and that's because it's being incentivized through other what do they call it?
It's financial incentivization.
But it's been what do they call it? I can't think of the term right now. My head just I forgot the term, but it's it's inflated, right? So somebody else is paying for it, and it makes it seem like the market is rewarding it when it's really not.
But the market response was such that they said they did the math and they said, "Oh dang, we thought that lowering our loan payment was going to be worth it, but we lost so much."
Right, exactly. The math doesn't math at the end of the day.
Right.
Which is what I appreciate about what Bahnsen has been doing, because what he's been doing is like, listen, we're not culture warriors in business. We have an objective. I came here because you said you would make me money. This is losing us money. Now, either I'm going to take my shares and go to a company who likes to make money, or you're decided to change your decision about what you're doing here and get, not because we're having a moral conversation. We can have that conversation.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about I came for dividend growth.
Right.
And you are failing the company by the way you're running it. And so you're not doing what's in the best interest of your shareholders. And it's funny that the world is made in such a way that foolishness doesn't produce financial success.
Right. Well, you knew I could see that something was going to change when all of the DEI funds, because there were a bunch of DEI investment funds that were artificially propped up.
Yep.
As soon as they started going down and there was no
more money
money to artificially prop them, you could say, "Oh man, give that the production schedule is such that you got to wait 12 to 18 months, but that's going to change."
Well, I mean, and that's the thing that has. So let's get back to this next 20 years. So now we have some reprieve. What are the things you're seeing now that Ron Paul we missed 20 years ago? We actually God's been kind to us, and we got a great movement happening right now. What's the next 20 years that we need to do? What do we need to do that we should have did with Ron Paul? What does this 20 years look like?
I mean, I think we got to build some companies, build some media companies, build some, and then build educational institutions.
Media companies.
Yeah.
Like?
Media companies that care about serving the audience and aren't trying to, all of conservative entertainment right now is still reactionary.
Mm.
We aren't building media companies that say, we're going to make the best teen movies. We're going to make the best action movies. We're going to make we're going to get out here and serve people and remind them what it is to be human, with our storytelling, with our music, with our publishing companies. Peter Thiel just he tried to buy Baen Books, which is a big science fiction publisher, and they refused his money because he's conservative. and so he started his own science fiction publishing company and went and bought a bunch of the writers and said, "Hey, I'm going to give you more money if you come over here," and freed them from the science fiction and fantasy magazine. They closed. They stopped taking. You can't send them stuff anymore because now they're going. They said, "Well, we want to become the science fiction magazine that amplifies minority voices." Right.
Ugh.
So they're destroying science fiction fantasy magazine. But one of the things they're doing is they've stopped actually serving their customer, and they're serving this agenda instead, this divisive agenda. And Peter Thiel says, well, we need our next generation of scientists and astronauts and everybody. We need science fiction to be able to open their imaginations to the possibilities, because that's one of the things that science fiction does. So many computer programmers and inventors, they start out reading science fiction when they're young, and they say, "Oh, the possibilities are there." Well, when you turn, so he's out, starting ARC Publishing.
It's funny as you're talking about this. I've always said there's Doug is doing his Man Rampant now. He's doing NSA is doing their ads that are having huge impact. And I've been saying what you see, there's only some things you can do after you've had 20 or 30 or 40 years. There's only some things you can say after you've done that.
Yeah.
It takes 40 years to be able to make some sentences work.
Right.
NSA, Logos School, ACCS, they've been able to say things that most people can't say because they've been doing it for so long. And as you're talking about imagination building, I thought about the fact that Marvel was able to do what they were able to do with the Marvel MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because they've had 86 years of buildup
right
to do it.
Yeah.
The Marvel started with 1939 or something like that. And the reason they became to the place where they can do $300 and something million per film was because of the imaginations that they shaped for over the last 8,600 years, and the impact that those actors have, and then the society the imaginations they're able to fuel now, right?
Right.
Have a massive culture. To say that doesn't have a massive cultural impact, that's a huge economic turn. First of all, when you have $350 million being funded just for a film, not including the marketing dollars, all the jobs that you produce because of something like writing comic books.
Right. Well, and the I think the comic book industry is a really good example, because you also have an entire pipeline of indie comics.
Right.
You've got an entire pipeline of you've got Comic-Cons, you had G4 TV, you had all of this, all of these institutions that grow up around successful institutions, right? And Marvel and DC were able to guide that whole culture. And what happens is the conservatives, because they don't understand and see and value that, it leaves a big gap, and the left comes in and they see the power, and then they say, we like power, so we want that, and then they destroy it.
Can I defend conservatives just a little bit?
Yeah.
Conservatives see Comic Book Boy and the nerds, and they're like, oh my goodness, we made soft man. Look at these guys who are stuck in their grandma's basement with their comic books, being fed by their moms and not doing anything with their lives, and then going to Comic-Con and dressing up in these weird outfits. Like, what the heck, dude? Go get a girl. Go get married. Go have some kids, and go hunt to do something with your life. You're stuck in here in this fantasy world and you're not doing anything. I mean, just to be honest, that's a fair read on some of these guys who have gone into this world, you know, you're like, they're just weird. I didn't describe you, did I? I'm sorry if I might have hit a nerve there. Yeah, but you can see, like, that's. Oh, wow. If there's a gun in there, Jason, I'm so sorry.
There's not a gun, but I do have.
Do you have comic books in your bag right now?
Yeah.
See, ladies and gentlemen, this is what I'm talking about.
So,
do you have your Dante in there?
No, I'm doing Dante on audio right now.
Oh, okay.
No, I've got.
What do you have in your bag? Are you just busting you out?
I've got the new Space Ghost, which has been really good.
I just properly defended all the conservatives.
And then, I just started this new Dark Horse series, William of Newbury.
Can I see that?
That I'm really enjoying. It's like Redwall in the Hellboy universe. It's super good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I rest my case, Your Honor.
Yeah. No.
I can't wait to see how you dig yourself out of this one.
I don't think I have to, right? You've got great storytellers working with a fantastic medium that is that's really
it's making weird people.
But there are the weird people make the algorithm. The algorithms and the weird people are the ones that make the news. But if you sell 300,000 editions of a comic, and then you get two dudes that dress up and go to Comic-Con.
Can I argue your position a different way? Because I don't like the way you're arguing it. I don't think you're doing a good job of defending this position.
Okay.
I think you're too close to the
I probably am.
I think of it this way. Everybody needs a nerd.
Well, yeah, there's two things. Because, like, I have a box at my local comic book shop that with my list of comics that I'm reading right now, and they make sure to order me one. And I go in, and they're like, "Oh, hey, there's a comic that I think you would like that's coming out." Because I know the guys that work there, and so I am that nerd, right?
Right.
But there.
You want me to jump in yet?
Yeah, because I'm not ashamed of it.
Well,
and you make me feel like I should be, so I have to defend myself.
Yes.
But I'm like, I'm not.
But I'm not.
So
I'm trying to push all the shame on you.
I feel like I need to defend myself because
you have two types of people in this world, and there's the only two type of people that I think we should be caring about: the people who actually go into the hole, and the people who hold the ropes that do.
Okay.
And I think you have some men who are particularly designed. God made them to go in holes, clean it out, blow it up, destroy it.
Yeah.
They're brilliant at it. They're gifted at it, beyond belief. And there's another guy who makes sure he gets out, who knows where the holes are to go in. Right now, the people who are running the world and ruling it are those guys that I just got done talking about conservatives have a problem with. It's not the big Brody dude who goes in the hole. It's the little Doge guy that has balls on his big balls on his tag. I'm just going to tell you the truth.
That was the best. That CNN segment where they're completely seriously talking about, and his handle is big balls. And he's saying, now this man big balls.
And this story is fantastic because Big Balls is uncovering all of their crap. He's the hero in the story, and they're like, can you believe he found all this money that we were laundering?
And they're thinking all we have to do is let everybody know.
If everybody knew his name was Big Balls, maybe no one would see how many billions of dollars from taxpayer money we've been laundering.
And everybody's making hats with his name on it.
Yes.
Going like he's the hero of the story. Right.
And that's so my point is to say that you have two kinds and I think now what the boldness it takes to do that. I'm not validating his name. I'm not whatever. That's what I'm not trying to say. I am trying to say that he's a target now.
Right.
And the boldness it takes to be a target there is real boldness. I mean, Elon Musk, for what it's worth, he's probably not a guy you want in the trenches with you in a real battle and fight with ammo. but he'll be the guy who gets the rocket to you to get the food.
Right.
He'll be the guy who gets the rocket to you to get ammo. He'll be the guy who gets the rocket to you to get you out of there and to get you to the hole, right? Like there is a tandem that works there, and we have to learn, I think, in our movement to thank God for both of these.
Yeah.
We have X because we had a nerd
Right.
who was reading comic books and said, wait a second, I know how this story goes.
Yeah.
I've seen the bad guy in this story. So this doesn't go well. Thank you. And so because of that, he said, well, what if if I have the power and I got the money and the resources to do it, what kind of hero do I want to be in this story? Here's who I want to be. He goes and buys X for $44 billion. By the way, which is the same price that U.S. aid had. I just want to let everybody know that real quick, right? And it's funny because the story is how efficient. What did Elon fire 80% of the people at Twitter?
Yeah. And there wasn't a hiccup.
And there wasn't hardly a hiccup. There was a few, but hardly a hiccup. Him and his nephew gutted the servers with a U-Haul, turned their private jet around, and because they told him they could take months to do it. Him and his nephew turned their private jet around, got a U-Haul, and went and gutted the servers at X. Him and his nephew, right? Like that's a weird nerd.
Yeah.
I would have just shot the whole thing up. None would have just worked. It wouldn't have worked, right? But you got to have those kind of guys. And so we need to learn to say, okay, it's good. They develop those kind of men. We need to develop that. And that's a form of masculinity that works itself out in a different way. It takes a certain sort of boldness to go against the status quo by yourself, right? Or to buy Twitter.
Yeah. And to see the play.
That's part of it, is to see the play. There's a certain vision. And as weird as you are, with your comic book still in your bag, your ability to see and to tell stories and to communicate and help me with Gnosticism and a lot of other people has been a huge blessing for a lot of guys that will never pick up a comic book, who won't engage in that world because it's just the way that you're made up, right? And that's fine. We have to make room for people to work in their different departments. Some are Army, some are Navy, some are Special Forces. You know, some are who did I miss? Army, Navy, Special Forces. I'm gonna get in so much trouble because I hear Air Force,
Marines,
and Marines. Thank you. I'm sorry. And so everybody works in a different capacity, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And part of what we're complaining about right now is the fact that China's got better nerds than us.
Yep.
And some nerds we need to. Yeah,
they don't. But our nerd. But the left has not wanted the nerds anywhere near. The ones. So.
I mean, but yeah, Silicon Valley.
They want them. They want their money, but they don't want them in the office with them, right? So, because they've been saying for years, we don't, this whole, you can't, it's too complex. The system's too complex. That's why the audit's failing. The system's too complex. That's why the audit's failing. That's what they keep saying. And the guy comes in with an algorithm on a USB drive and a laptop, and he puts the algorithm on his USB drive. He pops it onto the computer, and he says, "Just give me a minute." And then he produces a map of the whole payment structure.
Is that what happened?
That's what happened. And so they were like, "Oh no, they mapped it."
They're freaking out right now
because
do you know they're actually talking about shutting down the government? Have you seen this?
I haven't seen this.
They have literally talked about shutting down the government to keep Doge from seeing all the stuff. And I'm thinking, like, it's working.
Yeah.
Ron Paul is working.
But
everything you wanted.
But they had gotten so complex with the shell game that they had figured out, well, we have to pass the money through 5 or 6 institutions before it comes back to us, and then it's safe, right? So it's like, actually, that's what laundering is, right? You pass the money through enough institutions that we wash it and it comes out clean. And everybody that is a part of it keeps a piece, right? You go to the mafia to launder, 1.2 million, and you get $1 million back, and they keep 0.2, and that's how money laundering works. And each shell gets to keep some of it as it passes through. You have 5, 6 shells, and it took him a handful of minutes to map it all and to be able to produce and say, well, here now we can track each dollar, and you go, oh, that's how you make 170,000 a year and end up with 40 million in your bank account, right? That's the system.
I'm gonna try and play this for you.
Okay.
Hopefully it works. This is Alex Jones found this clip, but you just got to hear this.
Your colleague Jeff Merkley basically said he's prepared to try to shut down the government over some of these sledgehammer actions that he's seeing by Elon Musk. Are you prepared to shut down the government, to join Democratic colleagues who want to stand in the way of keeping the government open?
Well, you have to look at what the Trump administration is doing right now. They are simply trying to dismantle the government. So yes, look, if we have to take steps to be able to hold them accountable, use the leverage that we have to force it, I cannot support efforts that will continue this lawlessness that we're seeing when it comes to this administration's actions. And for us to be able to support government funding in that way, only for them to turn it around to dismantle the government, that is not something that should be allowed.
So
I can't believe this is happening. That's a congressman.
What's amazing? I don't know if you've read any of the executive orders. What's amazing is
it was on Meet the Press. I got to find out what that is.
How carefully legal they all are. They've got incredible lawyers writing these executive orders to make sure they're
right within the law,
carefully legal.
That's another 20 years that it's taken. I don't think you have to give a lot of credit to Liberty University and their law department.
Yep.
They have been working, Alliance Defending Freedom, I think, as well, ADF. They have been working tirelessly to try and figure out how to do a lot of this work for years and train lawyers over the years to think through this stuff.
You know what's wild? If Trump would have won last time, we wouldn't have gotten any of this.
No, we wouldn't have got this.
Because
he had to lose.
They played their hand.
Well, he didn't win. But if he would have actually gotten, the White House.
Yeah, no, but how the Constitution works is the people don't elect the government; the electors do.
Right.
So he did lose.
Right. Gotcha.
Whether he won the vote or not is a separate question.
The electors did elect Biden.
Electors did elect Biden.
That's a good point.
So we actually have, that's one of the brilliant things in our system is there's a safeguard for fraud.
Kind of.
No, there's in the sense that
yeah.
You still have a legal president.
Right, right.
And then if you uncover fraud, it doesn't throw everything into chaos.
Right.
Right. You
have processes in order.
There's a process in order.
There's an immune system.
There's an immune system, which I think is really important.
Why America is so unique. It's so unique. It's why it's hard to compare it to other places.
Because you had 20-year-old nerds writing the Constitution.
Guys who run around with comic books in their backpack.
Yeah. I mean, you had guys like Hamilton that were
that's right.
They're 20-year-old
nerds.
That's right.
That's right.
That they'd spent all
the verdict's out on Hamilton. I don't know if I like that guy.
Hamilton was a tragedy. Hamilton's life was tragic.
Yeah.
He
was brilliant.
Brilliance is undeniable.
Yeah.
And the systems that he built, both financially and constitutionally, were brilliant systems. I think
even Jefferson, I don't know how to untangle this.
Yeah, I think they were a break from the Western civic tradition, and they have transformed the Western civic tradition. So now they're a part of.
I was going to say now
Western,
it's a part of West. Yeah.
So, and Jefferson was trying to hold the line on the conservatism and hold the line. So Jefferson was the good guy, in the debates, but Hamilton was a brilliant nerd.
Yeah, Jefferson. Yeah, that's right.
So, and the fact that everybody's like, oh, these Doge guys, they're just a bunch of 20-year-olds. I'm like, that's who wrote our Constitution, man. I don't know.
You got to remember, America was founded by a bunch of 20-year-olds. Yeah. Franklin was a part of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Franklin was the old. He was
the older one, but I mean, he gets here at 16 or something like that. When did Franklin get here?
Something like that. And but by the time it came around, Franklin was the Elon Musk. He was the older guy that guided and directed the younger guys.
But he was involved so much still at a young age with some of the founding.
He was also brilliant. Jefferson was brilliant. I don't think the brilliance that was in that room, it's just a gift from God. There's not the only good explanation was that that for 100 years, 150 years, the Protestants had dug in on education. They had built educational institutions. They had defended their educational institutions, and they had began producing geniuses, or not producing geniuses, but they knew how to guide geniuses. The same thing happened in 1200 and 1300s in Florence. The same thing had happened in London in the 1500s, into the early 1600s. Right, you'd had these educational institutions where my great grandpa, grandpa, dad, and me all went through the same education. That you had this intergenerational conversation, you had intergenerational trust, you had you get a Milton, you get a Chaucer, you get a Dante, right? At the end of those time periods, and that's where I think if we had those educational institutions in place in Compton for generations, when a Kendrick Lamar comes along, you get something different.
We would have if we had less government intervention.
I think so. Yeah,
like that's
because,
part of,
because you see, Compton before the CIA introduced crack cocaine.
Yep, exactly.
You had families intact.
CIA didn't do that.
That's on the record now.
Right, I know.
That's no longer a conspiracy.
It's like
theory.
it's real.
That was an actual conspiracy.
But
and
at
now
the time,
we
people
know
were like, "No, government would never do that."
Yeah. I mean, I remember first hearing it and thinking, oh, man.
Rappers was talking about this in their songs. They would communicating. People were like, nah, man, it's not happening. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So,
and if you think, it's so funny. I think Dave Chappelle joked about this because, it's so funny. Black people have been trying to tell for the longest. The culture, and Americans just refused to believe it or listen that this was going on. Right. And all of a sudden now fentanyl's coming in. And we're like, oh, yeah.
Somebody's trying to use drugs.
Somebody's using drugs to destroy your community. Who would have thunk? Really? Democrats? You don't say.
Well, when all of a sudden Ice Cube starts looking like a conservative.
Come on now.
Because Ice Cube didn't change. All of a sudden the conservatives are like, man, the system is rigged against us. And Ice Cube's like, you want to talk now?
It's funny.
Let's talk.
This is like there's so much camaraderie here.
Freedom.
There's so much camaraderie here. There's so much camaraderie here. Like it's not even funny. It's just amazing how much of a consistency there is because, again, once you take off the Marxist glasses, all of a sudden everybody starts looking the same who shares a particular idea and worldview, right? It's amazing to me to see black cities or mayors who are predominantly black communities and mayors in black cities telling Trump, hey, why don't you come out here? Trump.
Yeah, let's talk.
Hey, who's that secretary guy who's worried about all the defense secretary? Bring him on out here too. We got some illegals we want him to take care of. Like, come get them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, but primarily Democrats.
Yeah. Because they don't. It is strange.
But they're still Americans.
How little they have to shift and change to suddenly, because what happened is the lid comes off of the box, and in those places, people have been saying, "Hey, there's something in this box. There's something in this box."
Right.
And the lid comes off, and you go, "Oh my gosh, look what's in the box!" And they say, "We've been telling you." But the difference between like Ice Cube and Eazy-E was a dad. Right, because they had the same
massive difference.
Yeah, so
massive difference.
That's where we need to focus our attention. Is how do we build families, support dads? How do we build? In the church, build up.
Let's go through that. So last time we talked, you said education is doubling over itself, possibly going to triple over itself in the next year or two.
Yeah.
Classical education, and everybody always says, oh, yeah, education is extremely important. The left says that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what everybody's saying. Yes, to have a gun is really important, right? Because it allows you power, right, to do things, to protect. But it's not just education. what else? I guess education is the beginning part, the cornerstone. I think worship is. I don't think you get education apart from worship.
Right.
First, you got to have churches planted.
You've got to have you have to have churches that care about and preach the Bible.
Yeah, I mean it's just essential.
You have to have, and that I think a big part of it is, return to historic Christianity, because, that. Do you remember that the documentary Questlove did about the New York?
Yep. The tapes that got hit and then.
Yeah. What was
Summer
amazing?
of Love, was it?
Summer of Love. Yeah. What was amazing was the gospel music was gospel music still.
It was the forefront of a lot of this. Yeah, Summer of Love was really radical because that's how I grew up, where there wasn't so much of a separation in a lot of ways between secular artists singing and the Clark sisters and everybody else. Everybody knew who we were. Like, it was, like, if we're going to do an event outside, everybody's invited except for the Muslims. And if they can come.
But they don't get to go on stage.
Backstage.
Yeah.
You're staying right around here in the corner. We'll give you a salute here or there.
But now you look at, Reverend Al Sharpton, and you go, how has that guy not been removed from, defrocked? Well, the biblical Christianity needs to be restored. Historic Christianity needs to be
Black churches don't defrock anybody.
Yeah, and so,
but most churches don't either.
That's
a Christianity problem.
That's the entire American Christianity. That's our.
I knew when I started seeing flamboyant gay white dudes in white Christian churches, I was like, oh no, that just wasn't a thing, right? That just wasn't a thing. In Black churches, we had it start happening long before. Just everybody tried not to say anything. You had the choir director everybody knew he was gay. The leader was like, and you had some of the best singers. Everybody knew these guys were gay, but everybody kept their mouth closed. In order to be able to get in the gospel, you had to go through a whole gay culture of guys to be able to even get into gospel music.
As the original Diddy Party?
I ain't gonna say that because I don't know about that, but maybe they probably had a few Lotion baby oils inside of their prayer closet. Let's just say that. Yeah. I can't believe I just said that. They probably did. Yeah. You had to go through them, right? Like that was, and so, and then when I started seeing it happen inside of like white church, I was like, whoa, what just happened? Like it wouldn't be allowed to be so like that guy gay. Why is he leading worship?
Right.
Now it's like, whoa, now it's just everywhere.
Yeah.
It's probably everywhere now.
So there isn't
an ecclesiastical office.
Ecclesiastical defense of the office and then defense of just the masculinity in the church. So you have that.
Doesn't that come from what you're talking about, which is like, okay, tending the garden.
Yep.
You're done. No, we're not going to do this.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Somebody coming in cleaning up everything. We're done here. I'm in charge. We're not going to do this. We're not going to. This is what we're going to do. And if you're not going to follow that, church discipline.
Right. And I think the judgment has to start with the household of God. We can't say we're going to put the world right and then we'll get to the church next. So the church needs to recover its just masculinity, love of the difference between masculinity and femininity, its protection of femininity, and that's one of the things that, when you see Kendrick up there saying, protect your daughters, we've got to learn to protect our daughters,
but all of a sudden we realize we don't like pedophilia anymore.
Yeah.
It's not allowed.
Right. Yeah.
We're not going to do it.
Yeah. And it'll be half a second before everybody says we've always been against it,
Right.
So
Exactly.
That's how it works.
Exactly.
But then you have, you need moms and dads to take responsibility for discipling their kids, and churches that support it. The churches that love and help and support the discipleship of kids, the discipleship of marriages, of the institution of marriage.
What do you mean by discipleship? Like you're meaning literally like taking the responsibility and duty to train their kids and educate them.
So the word disciple means student, right? So that they see their kids not as accessories, not as rivals, but as students.
I think they need to see their kids as holy.
Yeah,
sanctified and set apart.
And that's part of the return to a historic understanding of Christianity.
Because I think the reason that a lot of people send their kids to government schools is because they think their kids are just like the rest of those other pagans.
Yeah, they can't tell the difference, and I think,
but their kids aren't.
They aren't. They are claimed.
Right. Was it Micah? Was it Micah 2:5? Everybody talks about 1 Corinthians 6 or 7, I think it is, about the kids being made holy. But I think it's Micah 2:5 or something like that too, where it talks about like why has God made them one for a holy seed.
Right.
They belong to Him.
That's one of the primary purposes of marriage.
To give God a holy seed.
It's to raise up a holy seed.
That's right. And we have to remember that. So then the education that a holy seed gets is not the education of someone who is not a holy seed, right? So we give them an education that is worthy of a sanctified one, right? And so, which means we have to have that type of education.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that, one of the metaphors that Jesus uses for this is that that we are yeast that ends up being added to the lump and changing the entire lump, leavening the whole lump. But the way that works is you cut off a piece of the bread and you join it to the dough, right? So you've got a leavened lump of dough, right? You've got a piece of dough. And so if you make bread now, most of the time we buy yeast and then we add the yeast. And so but because we don't understand how bread is made, we actually misunderstand the metaphor, how bread used to be made. You would leaven a lump of dough, and then that leavened dough, you take a piece of it and you add it to the next lump, right? You add it to the next bit of dough, and then that leaven works its way through the dough, and it grows and it's leavened, and the whole lump is leavened, and then you cut off a piece, right? So it's
always connected to the last one.
It's always connected to the last one.
That's covenant.
And so he's talking about the process of the transformation of the world. Well, if our children are not well leavened, then when we pass them to the next generation, when they enter the lump of the next generation, they're not going to leaven the lump. And it's the power of the Spirit, and we do it by faith and all of that. But a significant part of that is, are we discipling children well? Are we saying you as a citizen of the kingdom of heaven get a citizen's education,
right?
And a citizen's education is educating them into the freedom of the kingdom of God, right? So historically, that's been through the liberal arts, but I love the liberal arts, and I hope everyone adopts it. But at the same time, it's not the method of the liberal arts education that establishes freedom, right? It's the treating them according to who God says they are. It says, "Welcome to the world, little disciple of Jesus."
Although I would not
citizen of the kingdom.
I would not overlook the blessing that the Holy Spirit has given over time to libre arts, right?
Yeah.
Which is a free man's education, right?
So it is, but I think
it's been handed down.
The liberal arts has been developed as people disciple their children, as teachers that are good at discipling children. They gather the wisdom that they're learning, they pass it to the next generation, right? The liberal arts grew up out of this process. It was part of the lump being leavened.
Yes.
Right? So there's a number of movements attempting to say, well, we're going to take the liberal arts, but we're going to we're going to be secular.
It's not, yeah.
It's just not going
It's not
to
gonna-
work. It's not going to last. It never lasts.
So we
because
got-
there's no salt, keeping it from rotting.
So 20 years still. So we got to get busy with the church being sanctified, worship, education,
Yep.
developing media institutions that are maturing and should I even say, I like maturing the mind and hearts and shaping those allegiances of generations to see the story and the narrative and to be a part of and to see the world the way that God actually made it.
Right.
And find the mystery in it, right? That's unique because it keeps them anchored and away from Gnosticism, which is really kind of important. So you have that the media institutions that are developing art that's good, so that the mind stays connected to the cosmos that God made.
Yeah, and I think the reason it's got to be institutions that that you can't just say, well, we're going to try and make a one-off movie, is like what we were talking about with Marvel. They started with comic books, and then their first movie was Howard the Duck. Right, that's where they started in making movies.
What a failure!
Depends on what it was intended to do, but yes,
not what it did.
but it was a way to basically train. How do we learn how to make a comic book movie?
Right.
Well, we'll take one of our smaller properties that has a rabid audience, and we'll start there, and then so it's not a movie intended to be popular for a broad audience.
It's the Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah, exactly. It's for this small
it's funny.
rabid audience.
It couldn't survive on the stage that it got either with the film, right?
It couldn't, except for the fact that
But
they made enough money to make their next movie,
right.
and their movies got better and better, and next thing you know, you're making Marvel movies.
Yeah.
But the institution was producing the way that they were able to move the sexual ethic of the country was not by a movie. It was by hundreds of movies and TV shows
over 86 years.
Well, with the comic books over 86 years, but with in the 90s, you suddenly start getting.
When did Howard the Duck come out? Because that's a good point. I'm gonna look for that.
85, I think.
You should know. You probably got his comic book in your bag.
Not in my bag.
Busted.
But you have the institutions that were built, Disney, Marvel, Lucasfilms,
Star Wars,
National Geographic, HGTV. The HGTV starts introducing
1986, August 1st.
So you have these institutions that are built, but they're built by serving an audience, and then what happens is you have people come in with an agenda and steer the institution so that all of the institutions shift.
It's Hollywood,
right? You get Hollywood, you get and
they saved it in the 40s, right? Like they saved it a couple times.
Yep. Where they
38 years ago, Howard the Duck. That's how long it took.
That's how long it
38,
took. Yeah.
38 years.
Well, it took
50 years.
So you had all of that time with comic books.
44 years.
44 years. And then you had about 20 years of making movies before you get the birth of then, what we think of as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Right? That's how long it took them to get there.
That's really interesting. So our plans are too microwavable.
Yep. Yeah. I
got an idea. 3 minutes.
People are mad at Snow White. Oh, well, we'll make a conservative Snow White.
Right. We're reactionary instead of saying
instead of saying, okay, let's build an institution. Let's serve our audience. Let's, what do they want? What's our most rabid audience? Well, Howard the Duck. All right, we'll make a Howard the Duck movie. That'll be a good opportunity to learn how to make movies. Right. And then the next generation will be the ones who actually, that's why the education is so important, because you've also got to be training the next generation and raising them up and be ready to hand off the reins to them with the institution that you've built. And now you take it the next step, right? You can't microwave it.
You have to have so many
culture.
things. It's really interesting. So you can't have everything. We lost, it's funny. You think about the educational institution when it changed about 120 years ago now.
Yeah.
And look what it's produced over the last 120 years.
Yeah.
A completely different type of human being than originally existed before, right?
Yeah, it's about 105 years.
105,
Yeah.
okay. And then you get Dewey and those guys.
Yep.
And so 105, so we are...
But even then, they're taking the Darwinistic education that they got in the upper levels and saying, how do we Darwinize
the rest of education?
How do we Darwinize K through 12? He's got, he wrote an essay on it, on the principles of Darwin applied to education.
So then, for us, if we wanted to go through this, so we're further ahead. I mark our movement starting with classical Christian education.
Yeah.
So that's 40 years ago. So we're at the place now where in the near future, we should have our Howard the Duck.
Yeah, I hope so. I think we
have a lot more than that because we're working with a lot more. We're not starting from scratch.
Yeah, we're not starting from scratch. And I actually mark the movement starting with the Jesus people teaching us how to sing the Bible again. So you have multiple generations.
That's good.
You have multiple generations of the church without any alcohol and singing and not singing the Bible.
That's a curse.
It is, yeah. So you, but it's about 70 years from the alcohol being made illegal to the Jesus People movement. So,
which is about the time
yeah. So that's kind of how I think about it. And then the Jesus People movement, you have guys come in, and it's
messy.
It's super messy. And the music is it's a little campy, but they're singing Bible verses again. They're saying to the crowd, to the audience, or sometimes to the congregation, okay, grab the pew Bible in front of you, and we're going to open to Psalm. We're going to open to Psalm, 120, and we're going to be singing verses 1, 2, and 3. Right. So they don't need a hymnal because they can open their Bible and then they
have a hymnal.
They have a hymnal.
Yeah.
Right. They don't. And so they return the
David Reese just lost his mind. Like, yes.
They return scripture to the songs of the church, and I think out of that is born the classical Christian school.
James Jordan talks about that too. I mean, he believes that same way. Like that's how you actually get warriors is by psalm singing. Right.
I'd love
war songs.
Does he have that in a lecture somewhere? That'd be awesome. I'd love to.
I've heard a few times where he said like psalms are the war songs of the church.
Okay.
And if you want them to go to war, you got to have songs for warriors.
Yeah.
And the psalms are those songs, right? And so I'm not saying as articulate as he would, but whoever does.
Right.
So you got that development from him, from psalms that create these type of people that starts. So at what year, when would you mark that off?
1969, 1970.
Okay. So we're further along then. It was 16 years. So we're in the 56th, 70th year then?
Yeah. So we're really just entering the third generation since that
mark off. And we're just now starting to sing psalms. It's amazing to watch people publicly go out and sing psalms in order with harmonies, and it's organized. And so it's maturing from back then to actual community songs that everybody knows around this psalm, and they sing it together, and it's becoming a fad.
In some ways it really is becoming a fad, which is interesting. But it's not just you have churches returning to older psalters.
Yeah.
But you also have churches all over the country that are rediscovering the Psalter that's published with the Book of Common Prayer.
Yep.
So and then you also have all sorts of churches that are now writing their own versions of the Psalms.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you have a restoration, but you also have people saying, "Oh, I'm going to write an album based on the Psalms."
Right.
So the
from all different traditions.
All different traditions.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's one place where you look and say, "Oh, the church is singing the Bible again." It's happening all over.
Yeah,
the
I've seen
place.
it in all different traditions,
and it's becoming the division point between churches that that sort of swing into theological liberalism and churches that avoid it. So because you've got all sorts of places where they're not singing out of old psalters. They've never heard any of the Genevan songs.
No, they're singing Beyonce songs in their churches.
They're singing gospel inspired or gospel light music. But they're out of the Bible, and they're avoiding the theological liberalism too. So because the power of the word sung by God's people, and the other thing that's interesting is it's the younger generation that is insisting on it.
Right.
It's not like you have younger generations saying, "No, I want classic hymns. I want old songs. I want psalms. I want songs based on the Bible," and the word sung just has a transformative effect.
So, I just want to trace this: church, restoration of worship.
Yep, and so you start getting
sanctification in there.
Yeah, you start getting just a return to the question. The question being, we're going to worship. What does God want?
Mm-hmm.
And so they go to the scriptures, and so that was something that you had the older kind of church growth model, and that overlapped. So because that kind of 50s church growth model, Crystal Cathedral style church growth model, it really doesn't collapse till the 90s.
Right.
That's when it finally collapses in on itself, the late 90s. So you have this sudden collapse of the church growth movement, which was the old way of doing things. That whole thing goes back really
then
to
comes
the
the
50s.
Emergent Church
And
Young Resistance Reform.
The Emergent Church, they were a weird mixture of the two.
Yes. The Young Resistance Reform and Emergent Church.
And the Emergent Church. And so then
They
you have
were.
this this really meltdown of the American church.
Institutional
church.
Yeah.
But out of it is coming all sorts of churches that say, okay, I had a really interesting conversation with some pastors from evangelical churches and Baptist churches and come out of the Black Baptist Church, and there's a group of pastors. We're all sitting around talking, and so what would it look like for us to do a worship service together? And I said, well, whatever it is, I want the confession of sin. That's the one I want to do. They said, the what? I said, well, the confession of sin. I said, in our church, we come into worship, and then as we're confronted by the presence of God, we confess our sins together, and then declare the gospel and the forgiveness of sins. And one of the pastors said, oh, that's a cool idea. Where'd you get that? And so I grabbed my Bible and I started opening it. And this pastor said, I am ashamed to say I've never once looked into the Bible for why we do things in church.
Mm.
I said, where do you get your stuff? He said, well, I guess some of it's tradition and some of it is sociological surveys. And he's having a realization, right?
Yeah.
He's a good dude, love the Lord, and he's a good pastor.
Yep.
But he was in this tradition that's where, how do you decide what to do for church? Well, you ask the people, what do they want?
Most of us are in that tradition.
Right.
Don't even know it.
And, good dude. And a couple of them said, we're going to start doing confession of sin in our church like next week. And I thought, oh, that's it's fascinating. It was fascinating and encouraging to me that these men who loved the Lord, they wanted to pastor their people and just couldn't see their own tradition, that as soon as things
The word
opened,
was revealed.
the word opened, they said, "Oh, of course, that's what I want. It's right there."
But I think the point of the story is that the power of God, the word of God, is powerful.
Is powerful.
Sharper
Yeah,
than a two-edged sword.
yeah.
Convicts, and they're like, you couldn't have made that argument. Hey, I'm going to tell you what you need to do. You just open it up.
Right. Well, and it was it was by saying, well, let's do something together. I know you guys, you love the Lord. We're in very different traditions. But what does it look like to do something together? It's that joining together. Chrysostom says that the yeast can't affect the loaf from a distance.
Mm.
We have to join ourselves to the world to be able to affect it, right? But you have to be yeasty, I guess,
or salty, depending on how you use it.
depending on which metaphor you're using. Yeah, but the yeast can't affect the loaf from a distance. And
part of it is people don't even think that the yeast is supposed to. People don't think the yeast is supposed to affect the loaf.
Right.
That's another argument.
But it also has the sword of the Spirit has that dividing effect, and it's uncomfortable when you go in and you say, well, the scriptures say this, and you have within the church people that go, no, I'm not interested, right? That dividing effect is pretty uncomfortable. So I think we sometimes avoid it because we don't want the dividing effect that the Word of God brings. I remember it's an older pastor. He said the quickest way to ruin a pastor's lunch is to open the Bible. Which